Thank you very much for joining us today at this panel. Today's topic is energy for some or energy for all. My name is Calum Nicholson, and I'll be moderating the discussion with our two experts here. I'm Scottish, but I'm based in Budapest. I'm Director of Research at the Danube Institute. And today we're very honored to have with us here in Budapest Professor Śmiech, who is the professor in the Department of Statistics at Krakow University of Economics. And his focus, among many things, is on energy economics. And we're also joined by Professor Laghidi, who is Moroccan. He's a geopolitical analyst of international cooperation and strategic development, and he advises across Africa and the Middle East. So today's topic, energy for some or energy for all, quite relevant right now, because if you look around the world right now, everything is really being thrown up. The old orthodoxies have been dissolving, particularly it seems since Trump got elected. The old world order is being very challenged. And so what I wanted to do today was just try and frame the discussion with a few questions which are really prompts for an open discussion and debate or even disagreement perhaps. Pulling back and looking at energy in the context of global trends and in the context of a lot of the changes that we're seeing worldwide at the moment, because of course we're not really sure where everything's going to come down. The things are up in the air right now. It's really unclear what the result will be. So I'm curious as two experts around strategic cooperation and around economics can actually what you can offer on these topics. So to begin, I just want to ask a question about the geopolitics of energy pricing. It may sound quite technical, but I want to open it in a quite general way, because of course since the war in Ukraine, in Europe, we've seen energy prices spike, obviously. But interestingly, if you check worldwide, the situation is much more mixed. But implied in this is the idea of the idea of energy getting more affordable, more reliable, was an assumption that would be happening more and more as we went along. But are we moving towards a world where energy is going to be getting more affordable, or is it simply going to get more expensive? And Professor Śmiech, maybe you could start.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon. So I think that this topic is, of course, very important, and the situation in Europe is very specific, and something that happened in 2022 is related to, in general, to the reliance of fossil fuels, or to be more precise, to gas, especially Russian gas in European Union countries. So if you think about fossil fuels, you should think about different markets that we have in these different fossil fuels. So if we have a gas market, then this market is very disconnected. So if you want to sell gas, you have to have infrastructure, you have the pipelines, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what's happened in Europe when the war begins, there was a shortage in supply of gas, and there was no way to supply the gas to the system. And the price of gas surged, and if you want to compare it, it was 10 times more expensive than it is nowadays. And it was no technical reason, to put this gas from different sources. Okay, so this situation is very different if we take into account coal, or if you take into account oil. So what we've learned from this lesson, that our dependence on fossil fuels is very risky. I think this is the lesson that we can learn from this. And this trend that Europe follow is actually a very correct trend. So what we need to be more, we have to build a more robust system. So we need a system that rely more on something that does not depend on the fossil fuel suppliers. Okay, so we need more renewables in our system, and we need more nuclear energy in our system, because this way we will be more robust and the energy will be cheaper. But if I may add something more, I think that in general, this trend, if we look at the fossil fuel prices, this situation is quite optimistic for the countries that use fossil fuels, because as Calum mentioned, there is a lot of uncertainty nowadays. So the financial market does not believe that everything will be okay with the economy. So this means that they predict that the demand for the fossil fuels would be rather low. So this means that predicted energy prices will be also quite low. And what is more, we have huge mega trends, and especially in China, when a huge new renewable capacity are built, and also several new nuclear reactors are under construction. So this means that the demand for fossil fuels seems to be limited in the future, and this means that the price of fossil fuel will be limited as well.
Thanks. And just one follow-up on that. So overall, generally speaking, do you think things will be... So you're saying the expense of energy basically completely depends on strategy, not... is it something that can be controlled by strategy, or is it really determined by geopolitical factors? Because there's policy, right? There's government policy, and we think that can control things. Mm-hmm. But that's true when the rules are stable, when the system is stable. But we're living in an age of instability. So can policy actually cure this sort of stuff?
Yes, but the problem is that when we build some policy, we build some systems, and we are not prepared for the events that are unpredictable. Okay, so this is something that happened. We believe in Europe that our situation is very stable, and we have enough energy in our system, and we don't really need to care about. And then the war began, and we found out in a very difficult situation. And this situation was really serious, because the storage capacity that was at that moment in the hands of the Gazprom, this storage level was very low. So it was a very huge risk of blackout in Europe, but helpfully the winter was quite mild, and there was a lot of wind in this moment. So for this reason, we survived somehow in Europe.
Yeah.
So you cannot predict everything, but assuming that you know what you know, you have to build the system that is resistant. I think this is the idea.
Before we turn to Professor Laghidi on the same question, I just want to ask something. As an economics professor, for your lifetime professionally, the system was, post-Cold War, things were pretty stable. Suddenly things geopolitically have been turned upside down. Is it even possible anymore to mathematically analyze like an economist anymore when there's so many variables that are not quantifiable impacting your modeling?
No.
Is it more challenging to be an economist now, in a sense?
It's always a problem, because all the models use the data from the past. Okay? Yeah. So if something happened that was not recorded in the past, it is difficult to predict how the economy, how the system would react to that.
Yeah. Thank you. And Professor Laghidi, the same question, really. Do you think energy is going to be getting more expensive? We've seen prices go up in Europe. It's not been everywhere in the world doing the same thing, but in 20 years, we'll be looking at energy for all, in a sense, or energy being much more scarce and much more competition for scarce energy.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
First of all, let me share actually my pleasure to be here in this beautiful city of Budapest, in this sovereign country of Hungary, and with such a wonderful public, young public. It's a real pleasure. First 3 words that I learned in Hungarian since I arrived less than 48 hours ago. First was Szia, so Szia. In my language, it's Salam, which translates also to peace. Second word that I learned was Köszönöm. Did I say it right? Thank you. Shukran in my language. And the third one was Bajarat, entrance. And before I answer to the subject, I'd like actually to notice that it wasn't just actually to make the translation. It was to bridge with you. It's very important to bridge with you as a public, but with you as a nation. It's very, very important. There is an old saying in Latin, and if my memory is good, it's from the Bible, that says, ut vido, ut credo, ut intelligam. As I see, as I believe, as I understand. Human perception is very important. And understanding that there is different perceptions to the same problem, to the same situation, is very important. You are young. You need to understand that there is different ways of looking at a situation. And we are talking about something that touches us all, which is energy. Let me translate it to its most useful form, electricity. Without it, my mic will not be working. I will be having to talk very, very loud so that the people at the back can listen to me. That's the importance of electricity. Without it, we will not be using our phones that we are becoming so attached to. Internet, that is so useful, not just to manage us, but to manage the world around us. Electricity. I'm coming from a continent that is the African continent, and I'm proudly African, as I am very proudly Moroccan and Moroccan patriot. And in Morocco, everybody knows that if you want to become our friend, you respect our sovereignty. And it's the same thing actually for your beautiful country, which is Hungary. And among the forms of sovereignty, it's not just actually the territorial that is undiscussed, the diplomatic, the political, but there is also the economic sovereignty, open to the world, but sovereign in different subjects. And one of those subjects is energy. Energy is very critical. We cannot allow any of our countries to stop having the right resources. You agree, Dr. Śmiech? Now, if you look at Africa in the big actually picture, one of my first conferences in 2006, I was back then a young director of a big multinational in maritime that was to become managing director afterward. And I was invited to give a conference in Senegal, beautiful country that I love actually, and I invite you to visit. And the conference was on food security. Yet my topic was on energy. How come? We had excess of production in many African countries of so many crops, including the delicious mango. Yet, every country was important. Can you guess why? Because there wasn't, back then, enough electricity that translates to reefer houses, that translates to permanent logistics. So the countries had to import. Without electricity, without energy, there is no food security at all. Same thing for transportation, same thing for health. I remember after the COVID in 2020, I had to carry a very important humanitarian mission to many African countries. And one of the things that we had the honor of sending and sharing with our African brothers and sisters, I choose my wording very carefully because it's about sharing. It's not charity, it's our duty, was a scanner, Modern IRM. And this scanner, I had to follow it with a generator. Why? Because in many cities in Africa today, you don't have enough electricity power to make one generator work. And without that scanner, many people couldn't go to operations, the doctor didn't know what diseases they had. So that's how important electricity is for our lives today. We're talking about food security, we're talking about health security, we're talking about the very life of people. So when it is so important, we don't have the luxury of choosing between if it is fossil and renewable. It's both. And even something new if we can find it, because we're talking about human lives here. And that's very, very important to understand. Which led us actually some regional initiatives that are today actually very practical in the field. We all followed with great interest what happened in the south of Europe just a few days ago. Remember when there was blackout in Spain and Portugal? Personally, I was very surprised. I had friends there. I have a lot of friends in Spain and Portugal, and I was calling them, what's happening? Some of them couldn't answer because there was no network coverage. You know, it's like coming from one of the movies about the zombies and things like that. Right? No more network coverage, no more internet, no more elevators working. Nothing was working anymore. And some speak about cyber attack. I don't actually jump to conclusions. I'm statesman. We will see actually what the results will be. And cybersecurity is very important, by the way. So watch actually your phones. So blackout, something that we didn't imagine we could actually happen, and that's such a huge scale in two big nations of the south of Europe, which lead us actually to rethink again our grid strategies, our protection, our threats actually that we can actually be touched with. And Morocco actually was very, very pleased and honored to share electricity with our friends from the north. And even actually the Prime Minister actually of Spain thanked His Majesty for that. And we did it out of conviction. We did it out of principles. So we have today, in the world where we live, not just actually to have backups, security stocks for energy, but also actually different types of sources of energy. I'm actually a strong believer in renewable, but hand in hand with the fossil. If you look actually or Google where is that, you will see that we have a station called NOR, N-O-O-R, which translates to light. Let there be light, fiat lux in Latin. And NOR is one of the biggest stations in the world, if not the biggest. By keeping humble, actually, I say one of the biggest in the world in terms of solar energy, combined with wind energy, which means automatically that you can produce literally 24 hours 7, but it's not enough. It allowed us to move from a country that imported 90% of its needs of energy to a country that can produce up to 50% of its needs. So it's strategic need, yet fossil is very important.
So on that, I mean, it's interesting because I framed the question around expensive energy. Is it going to get more expensive? But it sounds like what you're saying is it's not really about subjective or relative expense. It's about objective scarcity, and that's the issue around. Is that basically what you'd be saying?
Surviving comes before actually talking about the economics of the thing. Yeah. So we need to have actually, you said, we need to have the right continuity in terms of energy. Yeah, but in the same time, that leads me to my second part, which is the renewable energy. As we are speaking right now...
Well, we'll come on to renewables, actually, because I was
I was going to speak about fossil. So one actually of the most important things, because we talk about renewable here, I need actually to create kind of compensation. It's also to understand that fossil is still existential, not just for African countries, but also for Europe. As we are talking right now, we are developing a very important project that is actually a pipeline project between Nigeria, one of the biggest producers of gas in the world and in Africa, and between Morocco that is already linked by gas pipeline to Europe. Gas is good actually transition from thermic classical charcoal, to put it that way, and between other forms of energy. It's less costly, it's less harmful for the environment, and that's a project that not just will be producing electricity in all the 13 sovereign countries, actually Nigeria and Morocco included, but that's also very existential for the south of Europe, allowing Europe to diversify new sources of energy rather than just actually rely on LNG, gas, and other sources.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, this brings us on because you mentioned renewables and different systems. So obviously, we're living in a world right now where we've got the second coming of Donald Trump. And he's shown up and been a very, whether you like him or not, he's been very interesting. So the global order is obviously changed quite a lot on a lot of fronts, particularly economically. But there's been so much happening the last 2-3 months. The news every day, it's every few hours there's a new something happens to do with the American administration. And I'm wondering, one of these issues that could be impacted, of course, is when global order is being changed, is the consensus around the green energy, the green revolution, the Green New Deal, the transition to renewables. This has been happening for a while. Many nations are saying by 2030 or 2050 they wanted to be carbon neutral. What do you think Trump's America First policy, or just Trump's general position now, what do you think this heralds? What is this bringing in for the new normal? Will we see the Green New Deal thinking continue or not? I don't mind who goes. Go ahead, Professor.
Yes, I think that this is actually the very visible trend. So I think that there is no other way. And what we can learn from what Trump proposed to us, he proposed a lot of uncertainty. Okay, so I think that if we look at European Union, I think that we are in the same situation as China, actually, in terms of energy security. Because we don't have own resources, and China doesn't have own resources. So what China does in this situation, China invests a lot in energy security, and this energy security is understood as the independence. So this is the reason why they invest that much money in energy security. So I think that this is the only way that Europe can resist and can build a system that is resistant and does not depend on what's happening in the global economy. Okay, so we know that the idea of Trump is to sell us a lot of natural gas, but as this uncertainty is that high, we should suspect that maybe he will change his mind and we will have to find some other sources of energy. Of course, if we talk about the LNG, then the situation is not that difficult, because LNG can be produced anywhere and transported to the European facility quite easily. But still, there is a risk that there will be something wrong, and we will find ourselves in a very uncomfortable situation.
But in a kind of sentence almost, is the Green New Deal thinking, is that dead?
No.
No?
No, I don't think so. Yes, of course, we may talk about different details, and we may disagree with these details, but I think that the general direction is very robust. I think that we don't have anything else to do in Europe, actually, because, we have a very different situation if we look at the country that have own resources, like the US, for example. They have very different interests, and the Gulf countries and the countries that have the resources, they have benefit, especially Arabic countries, where actually the entire economy is related to the revenue from the fossil fuels. So for them, it is quite natural that they want to sell more and more, because this is the economy, this is how they survive. But on the other hand, we are the one that have to buy this, and this is something that is also related to different risk. So if you want to be robust, we have to limit the consumption of fossil fuel. In the long term, of course, because I'm not talking that we have to quit fossil fuel from our system nowadays, but I think that this is process that finally make our system robust.
Well, I just want to, before turning to Professor Laghidi, there's an interesting thing. The Green New Deal was premised on the idea that to save the world, you need to have renewables. But actually, there's a geopolitical argument to be making now for using renewables, which is simply diversifying where your energy is coming from, not simply being reliant on Russian gas or whatever it may be, Russian oil, because of the geopolitics. So is it possible that the Green New Deal could, or these types of thinking or using renewables could continue, but not for the reasons it was advocated for a much more realist, not an idealist reason? Do you think that's fair? This really to either of you on this question.
Well, I started by speaking about the importance of sovereignty. I think every country should be sovereign. Partnership around the world are very important. Strategic partnerships are very important. International commitment to international law is very important, yet interests of the countries need to be preserved. People are elected to serve the interests on the short run, mid run, but also on the long run of their people. It's very important. I'm very big actually fan of renewable, let's be very clear on that, but I'm very pragmatic person. Renewable alone is not enough, and one actually of the easy answers, and not actually to destroy any arguments, actually the opposite. I support what you said actually, Dr. Śmiech, a lot. It's storage. As long as we can't store actually renewable energy, that's a real huge problem. Let's be very clear on that. And second thing, it's about transportation, where we waste a lot. So automatically, let's not actually speak about 100% renewable, because it's not pragmatic, and that's not something that will be achieved in the next 10 years, okay? So not being able to achieve that in 10 years, we need actually fossil. And I'm not defendant. I'm not actually doing advocacy for, nor actually this part on that part. I'm a very pragmatic person. I know that the day actually when people will not have enough gas at the stations, they will go and strike, and that's a big trouble. I know that the day when people actually will have no more electricity on their hospitals and people will be dying in the hospitals, that will be a big problem. And same thing actually for food security, because we couldn't afford the reefers. So do we want to go to this situation? Absolutely not. So automatically we need to have backup, and that backup actually is fossil, hand in hand with the renewable, reducing actually the impact on environment, respecting our environment, respecting our legacy for the future, that goes without saying, but serving also the present. We cannot talk about what is happening in 30 years if I'm not able to secure the present of my students. Those youth actually needs jobs in the next actually few short time, and that also goes through an input from renewable energy. And let me just finish actually my thoughts, please. It's very important. We need to secure present for the youth. I started by saying in Latin that aut vido, ut credo, und intelligam. Youth believes what they see. When they see progress, they believe in progress, and they contribute to the progress of their countries. You cannot sell them ideas in 30 years if they don't have jobs today. It's very important to have. Let's get out of ideology and be more pragmatic. Unifying, respectful to the world, but pragmatic. I was speaking about gas. And again, you talked about Mr. Trump's administration. I don't get into interference with countries' actually policies. I'm very respectful to that. Mr. Trump is a strong defender actually of Moroccan sovereignty, and we are very thankful for that, and it's legitimate. So let me actually try to play my role and my hat, not as president of the African Mine Energy Council, but as a scholar, I hope. So the current administration supports all regional initiatives, and they made it very clear. That's the way actually how to make peoples, continents, sub-regions take their own initiatives to concrete things. And I started and ended actually my last intervention by speaking about the gas pipeline. Why? Big need actually to diversify the sources, just in terms actually of growth of the demand in gas in Europe, given that all current suppliers keep supplying. There is a big demand for gas. For domestic, for heating, you said it very clearly actually before, and I listened with great interest to what you said, and with great also admiration. Second thing that is very important, it's also for electricity, but we forget that gas is strategic in a world where there is so much uncertainty for the production of chemical products. Without chemical products, we don't have fertilizers. Again, food security. Gas is what gives us ammonium. Let's be very practical. Let's not talk just actually on superficial things. Without gas, you don't have ammonium. We don't have ammonium. You don't add it actually to phosphates, and you don't have actually such a beautiful grass outside, and you don't have actually the right production of agriculture. What saved actually Europe from famine 200 years ago and 100 years ago was this production of fertilizers. So chemical is very important industry, although it's not actually very nice for the environment, but it's very important for our survival as human beings. And we need actually to reduce the impact, yes, but we need to keep people actually fed, because if not, again, we have strikes in the street, and we have people actually fighting actually in the street, and we have death. So food security is very strategical. Gas is very important. And this initiative is very pragmatic. I want to share it with the youth, because what's of the things that I want you to see in the future happening before you. That's the new Africa that I want to advocate for. An Africa that builds itself, by itself, open to the world. 3 phases of this pipeline. The first one is already well advanced. Just 1 minute from your time. The first one goes from Senegal to Mauritania, to Morocco, and then injects to Europe. Senegal and Mauritania and Morocco have important reserves. Senegal and Mauritania already producing. Morocco is also producing actually right now gas. And it will be even more productive because there is the pipeline. It's like being close to a highway. Your logistics become less costly and you can export. Second phase, guess what? It's already actually working. It's from the beautiful country actually of Nigeria, going to Togo, to Benin, to Ghana. It's already exporting. The idea is about building on that, doubling the capacity, tripling the capacity, making it arrive to another country that is Ivory Coast. Third phase is linking what is between those 3. So pragmatic models, not debt, driven by the off-taker, the final buyer, that is the distribution company of gas, that is the one that is producing electricity, that is the one that is producing the pipelines also, because it's a maintenance all the time, and they want to fund that. You don't have to go into debt. You don't have to go into poverty. You go into prosperity, serving the great relation between the South and the North based on new principles of mutual respect, helping create jobs in Africa, which means less immigration. Creation of wealth, fighting poverty. That's the kind of model I want the youth to keep, because they are actually the ones that to whom I'm addressing the message. Models that are creative, not ideological, very pragmatical, creating value for everybody, that allows you to talk with the others while you are proud and see things in the field.
That's great. Okay, so you talked about jobs. Okay, this gets to a very interesting question, I think, which is that, you know, in Hungary, the state has a lot of involvement in a lot of industries. The Americans, right now, they're trying to remove the state from a lot of industries. Countries like Britain, we've gone backward and forward. The 70s, the state did a lot, then it dropped off. So there's a very interesting question. Remember, the theme of this panel, of course, is energy for some or energy for all. That's the basic framing thing for our discussion here. So should the job of getting energy access be a job for governments, or should it be one for the private sector? The governments or the private sector? And this is a very interesting question, because different nations seem to have a different approach. Is there a one-size-fits-all, or is it always down to individual nations? Because you talked about sovereignty, of course, which would imply, I think, that nations should be left to make their own decisions on this. Indeed, who could tell them otherwise? So that's the question for you both now, that the energy access, governments, private sector.
Okay, so the simple answer is both. Yeah, so private sector is very effective in innovating different things and in scaling, so the private sector is necessary. However, if we talk about the infrastructure, or if we talk about a very large project, for example, in Poland we are to build nuclear power plants, and the cost is estimated cost is about 50 billion euro. So this means that there is no industry in Poland that can provide such money and to get credit for that. So definitely this is the room for the government. And of course, if we talk about micro scale, we may find places, remote places, or vulnerable groups where it is not effective for the industry to provide electricity or to sell electricity at a low price. So it is also room for government to help this group, and there is the room for the government policy.
So it's complex in a sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which always sounds like whenever I say things are complex, it always feels like a cop-out. It's not really giving an answer, but it is. I guess that is a reality, because we seem to be living in an age where people think there is always an answer to every question, but maybe things are more specific than that. I've noticed we've got 15 minutes. We've got a couple more questions we want to get through. So, but very quickly, Professor Laghidi, do you have any thoughts on this? So, energy for all or energy for some, governments or the private sector?
I will give them the question. Can you afford actually to not have your cell phone for 7 days? Can you? Thank you, they answered for you. So that's not even actually a question. It's energy for everybody. If not, that's a big trouble for us as state people. It's a big trouble for us as individuals, as family, as community, etc. Now, the big question is about how to achieve affordable energy for everybody in a pragmatic manner while preserving the environment. So we are friends. We keep our friendship, and that's very important. And in the same time, catalyze new dynamics. I think one of our biggest diseases in the world today is that we think in a flat manner, in a horizontal manner, rather than we do compromises. Like if from this half-finished bottle of water, we need to do everything. We need to shower, we need to clean, we need to drink. No, it's impossible. If there is no fights today, there will be fights in a few seconds. We need to think creatively, but pragmatically, so people follow us, see results, vido ut credo. And we need to think vertically, not compromises, vertically, new ways of thinking. That's what the world today requires. And that includes the governance for energy. And that's why I said, but at the beginning, it's not about choosing between green or between fossil, it's about having both. It's not even a choice. It's not by choosing between going for the government or fully liberal, it's by having both, because it's not even a choice as such.
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
So in a pragmatic manner, just give me a second, because they're scared when they see you having your mic at your mouth. Actually, they're scared.
That's the point. Yeah.
So
we can continue.
Okay,
yeah.
You want to scare them?
Go on.
I won't. I will never actually scare the youth. That's the opposite. I would like actually to empower them because they are the future. So very important thing is that yes, we need policy, but policy that encourages the private sector. Yes, we need policy. We need policy that gives stability, that gives peace. We need policy that encourages international partnership in a creative manner, not in charity, but in creating and catalyzing new synergies. We need policy to show the path. We need policy that federates. But at the end, it's entrepreneurship that makes things happen in the field. You can have the best strategies, very beautiful in PowerPoint or Prezi. You invented Prezi in this country, and I love Prezi. You can have beautiful presentations. At the end of the day, if people don't take ownership of those policies, of those projects, don't innovate, don't believe in their countries, there is nothing. If you go to a desert, there is no difference between the desert close to Dubai and the one in other countries. But there is this desert where people that are billionaires will come and bring their money, which is UAE, which is the south of Morocco, which is other countries around the world in Africa. And there is this desert that people will never go because they perceive it as dangerous, as hostile. The difference is in perception, and it's the role of governments to contribute strongly and practically to make their countries perceived positively as peaceful, as open, with a positive culture. I took a walk yesterday in this beautiful city, and I told Liliana about that. I saw different types of architectures. I like art. When you are too pragmatic, you need also to compensate with some artistic approach. That gives you creativity. And you need to read outside also of your box. That's my message also to the youth. I saw different ascendants, cultural ascendants, from the south, from the north, from the west, from the east. I will not mention any countries, but they were all stamped with Hungarian culture. The buildings had different types of ascendants and influences, but they were Hungarian. Same thing that you will see in Morocco, same thing that you will see in Nigeria, same thing that you see in many countries that have a strong identity and culture. And this identity and culture, it's a heritage, yes, but it needs to be translated to something pragmatic, a capital that you don't use to make money with it, to value your people, to enhance their level actually of life is not a real capital. It becomes a burden. It becomes a cost. So countries like you, like us, have this need and this necessity and this duty also to make our heritage become an asset of attractiveness, of us, of smart people, of new ideas, to trigger the youth, to produce more, to create more values, and to come up with new solutions for energy management and energy production.
Thank you. Okay, so actually that's interesting, because what you're getting at is actually quite an interesting idea, that it's not really about the government or the market so much as about, a big part of it's the culture. Maybe we don't talk about that enough. That's a good point. So moving on, we haven't got much time. I've got a question here, which I think is the elephant in the room, not just now, but about 10 years now, as long as we've been talking about energy sustainability and renewables and so on, is this question of realism versus idealism. The idealism of let's be sustainable and energy efficient and so on, and the realism of having to provide for cheap energy, for energy for all in a sense. And the question I have here is it an impossible balancing act? Is it impossible to provide affordable energy for people and also decarbonize economies? In short, I suppose a way of putting this is a concern for bad weather, like climate change, really just a fair weather idea? I've heard the phrase fair weather idea in English. It means just an idea that is good for good times but doesn't work in hard times. So is it an impossible balancing act of sustainable energy and decarbonization?
Yeah, so once again, I have to say that it depends. Because I think that, of course, it is very attractive, and it is the mainstream that we talk about, the climate change, and I strongly believe that it is a very important issue. But I think that in Europe we should think, or we should translate this issue into energy security, and I think that somehow it goes to the same direction. So we need to reduce fossil fuel use, and what we do actually. So when we look at the numbers, when we look how looks energy consumption per capita, we see that it varies across different countries, but the countries that have own resources, they consume a lot. Okay, so we may say they don't care, but actually this is something that is related with the scarcity of energy. Okay, so if you don't need to save energy, you just don't save energy, no matter the ideology that it is behind, because people may believe or may not believe in energy crisis. So I think that this is actually realism. So the trend that we follow in Europe, and I believe that we will follow in Europe, this is our realism and this is our safety, and this is the only future for us. This is a very different story, as I said, for the countries that benefit from fossil fuel export, and they may have very different views, and for them economy may mean something different than for us. But specifically for us, energy transition is necessity. And I think that this is something that actually happened. So again, if we look at the situation in Poland, if we look at the action for the energy in 2028, 2029, there is no capacity that comes from fossil fuels. Okay, so this means that fossil fuels are not attractive economically, and the energy producer cannot promise that they will provide energy by that cost, that level that let them win this action. So it means that you know that what the market expects. The market, I agree with you that we are not prepared to leave the fossil fuel at the moment, but there is a lot of innovation. So this energy storage are better and better, and still the level of energy storage is very low. But it seems that this direction is very strong, and the market believe that this is something that the future will bring us.
We've only got about 5 minutes left, and I don't know if are we at the end. Are there going to be audience questions? I'm not sure which are always best. Okay, well, if we can wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, then actually, if anyone has any questions, just put your hand up if you have a question. 1, 2, 3, a couple of questions. Okay, let's wrap this up very quickly. This question, just very quickly, with this issue of is it an impossible trade-off of energy for all and decarbonization? Professor Laghidi.
I was raised as a gentleman. I cannot speak before two ladies. So if we can hear actually what they want to say, it would be very
that'd
good.
be great if you could. So, have you got a roving microphone? Liliana, do you want to offer my microphone?
Of course. All right, so where's the question? Okay, so here we have one.
Thank you for the very informative panel discussion. My question would be, how would you evaluate the recent US-Ukraine resource deal?
And should we just take one more now? And we can...
All right. What is the other one? If I knew, I would have better shoes to run.
Thank you. I really liked your opinion about Africa, how you were saying, but I don't think that the empowerment of Africa is in the interest of Western countries, because as we know, many Western countries are reliant on the exploitation of Africa, especially for like the tech sector. So how would that happen? Because I don't think that the West would let Africa have its time, because there has been situations in the past where strong governments in Africa were destabilized by West. Thank you.
Very good questions.
We'll take the second one.
Yeah, so the Ukraine deal, either of you got thoughts on the Ukraine deal, and also neo-colonialism, dependency theory, is the modern world just colonialism by other means and keeping countries trapped in a dependency cycle?
I'll start by the second question, with your permission, of course. Thank you very much. I like your question, actually. I like questions that make me think. I never learn by heart and repeat
my
speech.
questions?
They were wonderful. I answered them. That's the proof. But good point. I love your question. Generally, they say that when you say something, you start by compliment, then you say bad, you forget everything before. Not in your case, because it was very smart. Remember when I was talking about, and trust me, what I'm saying, I'm thinking in the same time, as mark of respect to you. Because you asked a smart question, so that requires that I use the few neurons that I still have. Remember when I was talking about vertical and horizontal thinking? That's what I want to inspire. I'm a very pragmatic guy. Before being actually, it's in my nature, before being statesman or chairman or professor or whatever. I'm a very pragmatic person. When I see two people fighting, I try to understand why, and I try to bring a new solution. Because if they are fighting, this means that none of them actually was able to find the solution anyway. So yes, in the past that was a problem, but there was also a lot of misunderstanding. There was ideologies. There were many of our countries that instead of building, they went saying to the others, you are bad, we hate you, we want to cut with you. Of course, the other one will be aggressive. You know, it happens in your family, it happens elsewhere. Now, how about actually we change the perception and we make people see our countries differently? And that's what is happening right now. Positive perception. You know, I was in some countries, I will not mention any, just recently. You can see that in my Facebook and Instagram. They are public. I was in some countries, and if you see the time when I was, and you Google the name of the country, you will see that there was extremist attacks, terrorist attacks. Everybody canceled their visits. I didn't. I went there. I gave conferences, not just actually at a high level. I sit with young women, I sit with young children, you can see that, and talk to them into trusting their countries, and we work together on very small projects that are pragmatic to give actually real examples on the field. Because perception doesn't need actually to be only from the outside, sometimes it's from the inside. When your people lose hope in their countries, that's a real big problem. When your people lose hope in their institutions, in their system, it's a really big problem. That's what conducts to failure of states. That's what conducts to extremism entering. That's what conducts from ideology coming from Iran or other actually terrorist states or other places in general. I don't want to mention anybody. I want to stay actually diplomatically correct to the maximum. You need people to trust in themselves, to trust in their countries, and to contribute to this development. The idea is not just being happy and trusting. No, the idea is to contribute to defend your country and build it. And you need to encourage actually regional approaches by concrete models in the field, which is something very important. Now, let me give you in 30 seconds.
We've just got Manila tonight. I have to give it room to, so very, very quick. 10 seconds. Yes,
you can
10
count
seconds.
them.
Okay, I'm counting.
10, 9, 8.
Okay.
So, minerals out of DCR, beautiful country that I love very much. Today, if you want to look at how it is done, it's young children, young women, they don't have any social security, etc. You will say that people will depend on that? Not really, because the logistics cost is much higher than the extraction cost. So people need actually these minerals to be extracted, locally semi-transformed, creating local values, investments, etc., and then exported with high value, which makes the logistics cost less and makes countries like the USA benefit from certain minerals, and Europe and Asia, etc., to not make anybody offended. That is with better cost, more reliability, more security stocks, let's say in Dakhla in the south of Morocco next to the new port. There is a lot of things to be done like that in food security, in health, and in other things that make the West more rich, but also makes Africa rich. Make the West create employment, but also Africa creates employment. That's the thing, kind of new thinking that we need to have that can only be done with the youth.
Fantastic, thank you. No, of course, thank you. And Professor Śmiech, the last comment, if maybe you could take the Ukraine question
okay.
quickly, yeah.
Yeah, so if this deal will end this war, I think that it will be the greatest success of this deal, because there is a lot of uncertainty with these rare materials in Ukraine, and of course Ukraine cannot extract it because they don't have resources, and if US will help with that, maybe there will also be some economical issue in here and some economical interest, but I think that nowadays there is not too much data that would prove that it will have some economic values in here, in that.
Thank you very much. We're out of time, I'm afraid, and we're on a tight leash with the time. So I just want to thank both of our speakers for coming all the way to Budapest from Poland, and you are based in Morocco, is that correct? Yeah, so it's amazing you've both come here. Thank you very much. And we've brought the good weather as well, so thank you for that as well. And thank you to all of you for joining today. Köszönöm szépen. And
thank you for being such a great moderator also. Big applause for our moderator, please.
Oh, well, and to the guests. Thank you.